Andrew, very good morning. Are you, like me, concerned at the number of police officers or law enforcement officers being arrested of late?
Good morning, and thank you for having me. Of course, none of us want to see our police involved in corruption or involved in abuses, but I think the fact that we are seeing arrests is far more promising than not seeing any action at all. South Africans already have quite low levels of trust and faith in police, particularly with regards to corruption. And that isn't going to change unless we see action taken and very public action. So in that sense, I think these arrests are very promising.
They're very promising, and then it now moves on to IPID, the Independent Police Investigative Directorate, to get convictions. What's their conviction rate?
Well, we know that IPID has a lot of trouble convicting police and getting the SAPS to formally discipline police. But in these instances, I don't think these will go to IPID. These were arrests made by the Hawks, so the SAPS organised crime focus, which will hopefully allow for a more efficient and better prosecution. Last year, talking about the pessimistic side of things, there were 178 SAPS members found guilty of corruption or fraud, and 61% of these still kept their jobs. So despite being convicted and found guilty, not fewer than half were dismissed. In terms of abuses in general, last year, only 1% of the South African police service faced formal disciplinary hearings, with almost half of these being found not guilty or being given no sanction. So I think any action, and this is serious action by the elite organised crime busting unit from within the SAPS, I think this should be seen in a positive light. We all know there are huge problems within the SAPS. As you point out, being arrested and having a successful conviction are different things, but even if the conviction isn't successful, we should hope that where wrong has occurred, members will be dismissed and held to account.
Are we seeing more law enforcement officers involved in criminal activity at all?
These things are very difficult to measure. Of course, corruption and crime are illicit activities. They're difficult to capture and measure scientifically. And therefore, we often look at public perceptions and experiences by police officials and the public at large. So it's not possible to know for sure. For example, we at the ISS recently did some research on experiences of lockdown policing. We all saw the major scandals in the early weeks of lockdown where police and soldiers were whipping people, they were making them do push-ups, they were assaulting them and, of course, killing in some instances, which gives the sense that those kind of actions are widespread. And yet our surveys and surveys coming out of the University of Johannesburg and elsewhere show that most people who experienced policing during lockdown felt that police treated them fairly. So it's always important to consider these media stories in context. I think that we have a very serious systemic problem in our police organizations, but it doesn't mean that most police are involved. What is more concerning, I think, is that the organizational cultures within the SAPS and probably within the Metro Police departments don't necessarily lend themselves to police officers reporting one another, holding one another accountable, and being supported by management when they do so. And if we can't change that, what is called a code of silence in police literature, it's going to be very difficult to root out those who are abusing their power within our structures.
Does it concern you at all that the investigation took 3 years to conclude? Is that the norm?
Because this is the Hawks deal with complex organized crime. So they are dealing with syndicates and big amounts of money. And in that sense, it isn't surprising. Of course, we all want swift justice. We want swift investigations. But these were probably this was probably a group of police officials who were part of organized crime, and in that sense, it was entrenched, it was established, and police wouldn't have necessarily been able to sweep in, simply pick out a few low-level participants and disrupt the long-term operation. So hopefully what they have done now will disrupt what was probably quite entrenched and established. So in that sense, I'm not too concerned, but of course, I understand we all want to see justice being swift and people facing the court as soon as possible.
All right, thank you so much for speaking with us, Andrew Fowle there, the Senior Researcher, Justice and Violence Prevention Institute for Security, talking about the recent arrest by the Hawks of 23 police officers for a range of charges.